We're cute.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to anybody listening in online. So good to have you with us this morning. It's a beautiful day, a little chilly, but sunny and beautiful.
Yes.
And we are delighted to have Ralph Leesburg with us this morning. Let's welcome him to Unity of Delaware. It was going to be Avalon 9 this morning, and Linda Blaine had a little bit of a health issue going on affecting her voice, so we are holding her in prayer and invite you to do that with us. We'll get them back as soon as we can. I always like to start with a couple of announcements. We're doing a community food drive, most of you know, all through the winter. So any Sunday, if you've got some good quality canned or boxed goods, packaged foods you want to bring in, we've got a box at the back, and we will regularly take them over to people in need of Delaware County. It's a goodly amount right now, so we'll be doing that every Sunday and letting it take them in as needed. The Unity Women's Lunch Group is meeting this Thursday. It's at Barbie Nolder's house, and I think most of the regular suspects have been informed about that. But if not, and you need the details, speak to Barbie here, or people listening in online. If you need details, just contact us through the church website. And I wanted to mention Unity of Columbus, our sister church on Mays Road in Columbus, is having a Christmas concert on Friday, December 9th. It's hard to believe we're into that season, isn't it? It kind of comes on as fast. But that's this Friday, December 9th at 7:30. They always put on a lovely concert. And so that's open. I think it's probably on a donation basis. And I think that's about it. So as always, we want to begin with prayer. Bring into our consciousness all those people, situations we are lifting up in prayer. We've been lighting candles back on the joys and concerns table, all those things. We bring them into our minds and hearts. And Ralph will lead us into prayer with a prayer song. Thank you, Ralph.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. You can sing that with me. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
Let's allow ourselves to become even more centered and still and alert to the presence of God in us. That presence and power that is always with us to heal us, to guide and protect us, to lead us forward in the path of life and health and wholeness and freedom. In these moments of prayer, we remember this abiding truth for all those in our community, for living beings everywhere, that there is not one that is separate from that power and presence, that we live and move and have our being within it. So all that we need is being provided. We are being led to our highest good. We are alert, we are ready to receive that guidance as we rest in silence, as we rest in this sweet winter season coming upon us, as we lay down our burdens and let God guide us. We rest. How grateful we are to know that in all times, in all circumstances, whatever challenges we may be facing, we can rest and let God do the work. We are one with the living God, and we are being led forward in paths of peace, wholeness, and freedom. And we are grateful. And so it is. Amen.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed. tune, most of you have heard before, and most of you have heard the story of how it came about, so I won't tell you the story. But some days it's easier to do this than others. Doesn't matter where they come from, doesn't matter what their name, doesn't matter what they look like, or if they've been unjustly blamed. Doesn't matter how they're different, doesn't matter how they pray. The only thing that really matters is that you love them anyway. Love them anyway, each and every day. No matter what they say, love them anyway. Love them anyway, each and every day. No matter what they say, love them anyway. Love them any way that you can and you'll discover. Love them any way that you can, you'll find it's true. There is something deep within that you'll uncover, and that thing within is always loving you. Doesn't matter how they're different, doesn't matter how they pray. The only thing that really matters is that you love them anyway. It doesn't matter if they're many or if they're standing all alone. Doesn't matter their advancement or if their tools are made of stone. It doesn't matter if they're richer, it doesn't matter if they're not. It doesn't matter if their homeland is freezing cold or blazing hot. Love them anyway, each and every day. No matter what they say, love them anyway. Love them anyway, each and every day. No matter what they say, love them anyway. Love them any way that you can and you'll discover. Love them any way that you can, you'll find it's true. There is something deep within that you'll uncover, and that thing within is always loving you. Doesn't matter how they're different, doesn't matter how they pray. The only thing that really matters is that you love them anyway. The only thing that really matters is that you love them anyway. Joanne.
Thank you, and let's thank Ralph again, for especially fitting us in on short notice. I called him like 3 days ago, can you come? And he said, yay, thank you, Ralph. You're blessed. Well, I'm thinking about rest today, as you might already be aware. This is kind of, we're heading into a season of rest, and I think it's an important topic right now. So I'm thinking about rest all week long in different incarnations, and I stumbled upon this joke I thought was kind of appropriate for that. It was a woman, she at home, a few children, and they were dog lovers, I guess, but they found out this old dog was just kind of coming into their yard every day, coming up and wanting to come in. So the woman would let the dog in and go down the hall, the living room, get on the couch and sleep for a while, and then wanted to go back out and left. And this started happening every day for quite a long while. Dog would show up, she'd open the door, he'd come in, take a nice sleep, and then go. So she just got curious after a few weeks of this, and she put a note on the dog's collar, and it said, every afternoon, your dog is coming to my house for a nap. So she sent that off on the dog, and the dog came back the very next day with a nap that said, He lives in a home with 4 children. He's trying to catch up on his sleep. Can I come with him? I thought that was sweet. The importance of a nap. We all want them. And I think we, in some ways, need rest more than ever right now. Given what our culture is like, given what our daily lives are like, I decided to kind of focus this month on maybe the best intangible gifts. We might think about giving ourselves or one another. What we give ourselves, we wind up giving others too, in terms of inner gifts. If there's something we decide to cultivate or realize or bring more into our lives, that impacts everybody around us too. What do you most need? What would be the best gifts for you this season? What do you need at a deep level that would really enrich your life? So I'm trying to think about those kind of things this week. I was talking last week about a little more ability to regulate attention, deciding what we want to pay attention to, that can bring much greater freedom and peace if we can get our minds under control a little bit, what we're focusing on, what our attention is on. And this week, it's a little bit of a continuation on that, really. I'm thinking about our deep need for rest. And that has to do with how we direct our attention too, I think, in many ways. I think we're all dealing a lot with being a little overtired, a little overbusy, a little distracted. And our need for rest, I think, is profound right now. And as we're heading into these winter months, it's a time of rest for the earth. I think it's a time for us to think about rest as well. Are we truly resting ourselves, allowing ourselves to rest deeply, draw from the inner reserves that God gives each of us? So I started thinking again about the Sabbath, or the Shabbat. In Hebrew tradition, it was built right into our sacred teachings. It was part of the creation story. By legend, by tradition, God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th rested. Some wisdom scholars, sages say that was a kind of a demonstration by the Creator that rest is needed as a part of any creative process, that sustained creativity isn't possible without rest, regular rest. And so it was built into it, a day of rest. And then, of course, in the Bible, in Exodus, it was presented as one of the commandments, one of the 10 commandments, that you rest, that you honor the Sabbath, to keep it holy. I love that expression, to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy. It's a sacred thing. It's sanctified. It's that important. It's not just once in a while when you can take a break. It needs to be a regular part of your life, as a sacred part of your life. So I was reading a book recently. I think that there's good reason why the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, as we have it say it in Christian circles, it's built into the fabric of creation, and it's a basic guidance from God thing for how we live our lives. It's a commandment. It's an inner law, because it enables us to live more creatively, more peacefully. Well, I've been reading a book lately. The author is Tiffany Shlain, I think her name is. And she's kind of taken a fresh approach to the Shabbat, to the Sabbath. And she's written a book called 24/6. We'll play on words, not 24/7, 24/6. Leave 7 for rest. It's called 24/6 if you want to read it. I'm finding it very, very helpful, very enriching. And she talks about how she and her husband and their kids, for more than a decade now, they have been honoring Shabbat regularly. For them, and I think most Jewish households, it's Friday evening to Saturday evening, am I right? And they start it with a prayer and a Friday evening dinner, and then all through Saturday, they do their heart's desire. They are off the clock, and for them it's a big thing about no screens. They are offline. They call it a tech Shabbat. It's a tech Shabbat. And their kids, it's a tech Shabbat. There's no screens on the cell phones. There's no screens on the wrist. There's no screens on the computer, on the desktops. They're not browsing on their smart TV. You can do that now, too. We have so many ways of being online at all times. And she makes a really, really strong point and really drives it home how we underestimate how routine that's become for us now, to flick the wrist, to look at this, to check the phone. It's something like 80 times a day is the usual times people check their phones. That's average now. It's become a distracting kind of impulse that punctuates our days and disturbs our focus from what else we might want to pay attention to or need. And she's really convinced me, I've kind of forgotten. It's been maybe a little over a decade. I think smartphones started coming in around 08, 09, something like that. It's been a while, maybe 15 years now. And it was gradual, us all sort of getting online in this way. Now it's so habitual, we don't even think about how different it used to be, and not that long ago, 15 to 20 years ago. Things that used to be once in a while activities, like shopping, right? That used to be once in a while. Like communications, like scheduling things or planning things, like taking in the news, taking classes, going to movies. Those all used to be time-limited things. For kids, like watching cartoons, that was Saturday morning. Any kind of programming like that, they were time-limited things at certain times. I kind of remember the TV listing, say, oh, what's on? Oh, good. And then you wait, you look forward to it, and you watch that thing. Now everything's on all the time. And you can't find what you want, anything to watch because there's so much. Anyone else have that experience? And then you got to know what app it's on. You know, it's like, what is that on Netflix? Is it on Amazon Prime? Is it on whatever? It's very confusing. Well, there's a lot of wonders about this. There's a lot available to us now, a lot of information. And there's many blessings from that for sure. But the trouble with all that is that we're never getting off work anymore, and we've done that to ourselves. Because these things can all be done 24/7 now, very often we feel like we should be doing things 24/7. Because we can. Phone is right here, I'll just get on that. Want me to look that up? Okay. We're on it all the time. Does anyone else have a problem with this sometimes? It's become very common, and it's not a way of living restfully. And the trouble with that is it's constantly distracting our attention. So we often feel, I do anyway, I sometimes feel like I just don't have time to think. I don't have time to think and reflect about what do I really want right now? What's really my priorities in my life right now? We're so busy attending to the day-by-day stuff with being on 24/7, we're not having time to do that. And there's clearly addiction involved in it, the sense that it's so urgent we attend to this all the time. When how many times is it really urgent? How many times could it really wait that we don't really need to pull the phone out or look something up or check something or plan something? There's definitely an addictive quality to it. There's a lot of research going on into that. But it impacts us in dramatic ways in all the moments of our lives, even really important ones. I was remembering a time some years back now. I was doing some volunteer chaplaincy with a chaplain group of a hospice program in Columbus. And I had been visiting a woman for a few months who had ALS, was in advanced stages of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and she was living with her sister and her family because she had lived alone and she needed help now. And in the final days, she was in an inpatient hospice facility and room, and they were keeping a close eye on her. And I was visiting her around the bed in those last couple of days. And I remember a nurse was there coming in and out pretty routinely to check on her. It was clear that she was going to be passing soon. And her sister and her niece, her sister's daughter, was in the room by the bed, and I was there by the bed for a period of time. And the sister's phone kept going. Sister's phone kept dinging, dinging, dinging. And she kept picking it up and talking in a loud voice around the bed. Maybe couldn't stand being present, maybe wanted the distraction, or maybe just couldn't resist the addiction of picking it up. And we've all been in places where people are picking up their phone. I did a memorial service, somebody in the front row, a member of the family, picked up their phone. It was a loved one's funeral. This is happening a lot in our lives, would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had experiences of that. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's everybody's fault, because there's a lot of reasons why we've been kind of pulled into this addictive position with our technology. And And we didn't know we were getting into that when we got a smartphone, did we? I don't know whether I'd sign up for that. I think when we started, we all thought probably we could put it down anytime, just like we did our flip phones. And anytime there's been new technology, there's always anxiety and concern about, kids will be, their minds ruined by television. Well, I don't know whether there's been some damage, but any new technology, there's concerns about it. And we're still coming to grips with how to handle this. But I think this tech Shabbat idea is a pretty darn good idea. Reclaiming the Sabbath. I mean, if a funeral, if a loved one's death, if a funeral, if all these important occasions of our lives are being disrupted by distractions we can't seem to resist somehow, we need to pay attention to this because it means we're being distracted and dinged at all the time in our lives. It could be happening, 24/7 in your life. You could be even taking it to bed almost. Phones in the bedroom, the lights in there. There's research indicating that if there's just even a phone close by, it's a distraction. You're kind of waiting for it. You're checking it. You're expecting it to alert you of something. And there's a lot of research to indicate they're kind of set up that way because they want to keep you online so that you see more ads and you participate more in online things. I know a lot of people now who are beginning to question that and are beginning to I use do not disturb a lot. Anybody else? A certain time of night. It's kind of like a nighttime Shabbat or Sabbath I do. I don't want to be picking up the phone after 9 o'clock at night. I often go to bed early. I don't want dings. I don't want to hear anything from the phone. I don't want to see it. I think there's a lot of people doing things like that now. So they can be present, have their attention on what they want. And so they can rest at night and realize they're not going to be bothered. It's one thing if you've got somebody that you have to keep close tabs on, an emergency kind of care situation. But often it's not the case. We can give ourselves rest. We can give ourselves a tech-free space and time. And the more regularly we can do it, the better for us. So Tiffany Shlain, in her book 24/6, she talks about how this has become a really treasured time in her family's life, including her teenage daughters now. They look forward to it all week. They plan for what they're going to do on their Sabbath day, on their Shabbat. They start always with a Friday evening dinner with friends or relatives. They have a nice dinner, candles on the table, flowers. They gather. And then they think about it on Saturday, plan all week for what do they want to do. She talks about it as being like, they have a dog. She talks about how wonderful it is when you can take your dog somewhere and they can run off leash. You can relate to this, can't you? We can too. It's a rare thing to be able to let your dog run around off leash. It's got to be a safe area. She said that Saturday is like their time being off leash. They're off leash all day. They're not going to be bothered by anything. They're not going to be doing any work. And everybody in their work circle has come to know that too, and that's a blessing for them because people on their teams or in their work groups realize, it's okay to give myself a day every week. My boss is doing that. My colleague is doing that. I can take a day off every week and let myself rest and replenish and nourish myself. And they do all kinds of things on that Saturday. Anything, exercise things, fun things, games, museum trips, art, music, whatever it is. She said it's stimulated their creativity. Because, creativity requires some space to incubate in. Wouldn't you agree, those of you who paint or write songs or make music, you can't be constantly distracted and create. Our creation story told us that right up front. You need rest. You need to be able to be in a free space, free time, free mind, not waiting for a ding or responding to a distracting message. You need to be able to be free. So that's become it's improved their relationships in the family, their relationships with friends. They have more time to nourish those, to really be present with one another, to think in a leisurely way, to reflect on what do you want to be doing in your life right now. It all sounds really good. So it's like, why do we have so much trouble with it? Why is this a challenge for so many of us? And I think there's lots of good reasons why that's happened, but lots of reasons why we can shift. We can change that, where our minds are trainable and we can make different decisions about how we're going to handle our attention and how we're going to handle our rest. how much rest we're going to give ourselves. Are we going to honor the Shabbat, the Sabbath, keep it holy? So these are some of the ideas I gleaned from her book and maybe one or two others, but how to give yourself more rest. If you agree it's an important thing we all need to look at, to give ourselves more rest so that we can be more creative and live our lives more fully and freely, more the way we want to. Here's what I came up with, how to honor it. It starts with a commitment. You make a decision, an intention, to remember the Sabbath, the Shabbat, to keep it holy. Make that commitment, and remember that it's making the commitment doesn't make it any particular one way. How you decide to practice that is personal and is unique. Everybody's way of practicing the Sabbath would be different. I think we tend to have kind of a Puritan idea about it in Christian tradition sometimes. So that's a day we have to sit around and read scripture all day. Anyone grow up thinking that was what it meant to honor the Sabbath? Bible readings all day long. Who was it I was talking to? Sandy Fisher said she wasn't allowed to do something wasn't allowed to swim or play cards or something. Roller skate. She wasn't allowed to roller skate on the Sabbath. There's a lot of that in kind of Christian history. It was about restrictions, things you couldn't do. But no, what we're talking about here is more about it's what you're going to free yourself to do. It's about a day of freedom, of being off leash. So how you practice it is like can be whatever you want, whatever your heart's desire, just so you're not working, just so you're not online working. That's the key thing. Second one is you're going to create a new habit now, and the way to create a new habit is to replace it with things you love. Replace it with things you love. Whenever you're trying to change a habit from something that you know isn't good for you, it's negative for you, you don't want to just feel deprived. You want to replace it with enriching things, with things you'll love. She says that's what it's all about. If you're going to do a regular commitment to Sabbath, once a week is ideal if you can do it. If you can't do it that much, do it as much as you can, but commit to a regular practice of the Sabbath. She said, make a list of all the things you wish you did more of, wish you had more time to focus on, things that bless you, things that are enriching for you, things you just love, that you don't get to do as much as you like. That's the list you want to make. That's what you want to think about. And then you want to fill your Sabbath with that. Fill your Sabbath with that. Third one, create rituals for your Sabbath to sanctify it. I love that idea. Out of Jewish tradition, Jewish households, the Shabbat starts at a certain time, Friday evening, before the meal. Those of you who know more about this than I do, correct me, but I love the idea there's certain prayer, a reading, a Kiddush prayer, and a cup called the Kiddush cup, which I believe means sanctification in Hebrew, where you pour the wine or grape juice. You say a prayer in honor. We're starting the Shabbat, the Sabbath that begins now. And in some households, the cup goes around the circle. Everyone drinks from that cup. And then the Shabbat has begun. Sabbath has begun. Candles are lit on the table. Flowers are there. The meal is ready to be served. It's a way of honoring it, keeping it holy, sanctifying it. This isn't just an ordinary dinner. This signifies the beginning of our day of freedom and joy and being with one another and celebrating the blessings of life. That's what it's about. So create rituals for it. It could be a special dinner. It could be a certain way you decorate the house or a candle you put out. It could be anything, but find a way to kind of sanctify it, a ritual of some kind. Rituals are important in our lives, I think. They're kind of tangible, like physical symptoms or signs that sanctify things, that make it demonstrate for us and others that this is something important. It's not just another day. This activity we're doing is important. Fourth one, let your Sabbath expand as you're guided. Give yourself freedom for it. It doesn't have to be in any particular way. They decide, and you might find it spilling over into other parts of your life even more. Tiffany Schlain said their family enjoyed so much that experience once a week of being offline, their tech Shabbat, that they started also, kind of taking on some policies like no screens upstairs in the bedroom area. They don't take them up to bed with them. And no screens a half an hour before going to bed or the first half hour of the day. No screens. I think that's a good one because I was in a habit for a while of plunging right into the morning news feed that's not a good way to start the day. It's better to give yourself some time of rest, a little reading or journaling, or just having your coffee and looking out at the sun coming up. What nourishes you is the question always with your Shabbat practices. So they can kind of begin to overflow into other parts of your life. I know people that really celebrate and make holy a nap. Any of you have a holy nap time? That, it's kind of a certain time of day. They just really like to kind of close the eyes, close the drapes, and just kind of, rest for a little bit. It can be a very sacred thing. It can feel very nourishing to take a nap at a certain time. We always got to kick Joe and I out of his mother, Irene. She would say again and again, "Well, I'm not a napper. I've never been a napper." But invariably, every afternoon, she'd be there in her chair with her eyes closed. "No, I wasn't napping. I'm not a napper." Like there's something wrong with napping. I think that's that old Puritan ethic in there. Why not embrace the nap? I think a lot of people do. It's kind of part of that, honoring our need for rest and claiming it as an important part of our lives. And I'm adding this one as a big part of the Shabbat practice, the Sabbath practice. The fifth one, I think we all need and practice in learning to hand things over to God. I think that's a big part of being able to rest. Practice letting things go that you cannot control, which is almost everything. Give them over to the universe for handling. We tend to think, and we do it a lot, we tend to think that worrying about something is doing something about it, and it isn't. It's just worrying, and in fact, it's just occupying our minds, our attention, distracting us and worrying and agitating us and making us harder to rest. Worrying isn't doing anything. We need practice in releasing things into God's care and keeping. So I've always loved this little scripture from Matthew 11, where Jesus is saying to his listeners, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." It's very resonant, isn't it? It's like, somebody can give me rest. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I think that's really something to reflect on. Maybe in your next Sabbath experience, take a moment to reflect on what did he mean by that? How do you give someone rest? I think what he meant was, if you follow my practice, my teachings, my way of communing with God, of practicing oneness with God, he could say the Father and I are one to that extent. But if you follow my teachings of communing with God and letting God guide you, letting God do the work, you will find the rest that you need. Not if you think you've got to do everything yourself. If you've learned you're one with God, and God is power and presence and healing energy, God is all that is needed, you can hand things over to God and not worry about them endlessly. You're going to have more peace, more rest if you learn to let God do the work, if you release things into God's care and keeping. I had a wonderful demonstration of that, model of that, years ago when I was teaching at Columbus State. I was teaching some English as a second language at the time. And all my students were working hard to learn the English language, which is not an easy language to grasp. And a lot of them had not been in the country long. They were from all over the world. And the challenges of figuring out how to learn in America, learn the language, find employment, get a driver's license, learn how to drive on our freeways. There's about 1 million challenges a day these people were confronting. And I would hear about them, they'd share things with me, and I would go home just worried to death about these young people, these young adults. And you can only do so much as a teacher. It's very limited, really, what you can do, like so many things in life. I was taking it home with me a lot, so worried about these young people. Well, the senior teacher in my group, she offered me good advice. She was a wise woman. Her husband was a Quaker minister. They were very kind of spiritually tuned in. And she understood perfectly. She was doing the same work, and she said she quite intentionally, every day on the drive home from teaching, intentionally released them into God's care and keeping. And knew they were being guided and protected by God in them and God all around them. And what they needed, they were going to be guided in the path of that. And she intentionally did that release every day. And the thing to remember is that is doing something. Worrying feels like we're doing something. We think we're thinking about it, planning, figuring it out. We waste lots and lots of time. We're not really doing anything. But I believe there is a power in knowing God is present with that person, fills and surrounds that person, is guiding them. You're entrusting them into that care. You're seeing them in touch with God in them. They're being guided forward in peace and freedom and health and wholeness. And then we release that into the universe. I think that's doing a lot. It's doing a lot more than our simple worrying or agitating about things. It's a wonderful quote from Annie Dillard, who wrote, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." And I think that's something really to kind of reflect on as well. And we can choose how we're going to spend our days. I don't want to be a slave to my phone or my screen. I don't want to be working 24/7. I don't want to be online all the time. I want time to think and reflect and be present to the beauty of the day and the beauties of the night. I want the Sabbath. I want it regularly in my life because I believe the blessings of that are profound. The benefits of our smartphones and our computers, they're certainly immense, and we appreciate them. But our need for time to rest and reflect is also immense and needs to be kept holy. So let's take that into prayer for a moment as we close out today. Affirm our awareness of God in us, always with us to guide us in paths of freedom and peace and wisdom and wholeness. We know that power and presence is with each one of us at all times, in all places. And we know that God of our being wants us to be rested and nurtured and in full command of our faculties, free, peaceful, filled with creative energy flowing through us easily, free of agitation and unrest, able to rest in God and know that all is well. God is doing the work. We can rest and follow God's lead. How grateful we are to know God is with us unfailingly. And so it is. Amen. All right, Ralph has another song for us, and he will tell you what that is in just a moment.
I always consider myself off the leash when Cheryl was out of town. Because I can make the bed any way that I want to. I don't know if the rest of you ever have too many pillows on the bed because somebody thinks it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I played this tune here before too, and Joe and Joanne know the echo part, so they can fill in on that.
All right.
There is nothing to heal. There is nothing to fix. You don't need gimmicks. You don't need tricks. It's all there inside, waiting to come out. There is nothing to heal. There's only truth to reveal. That's what I'm talking about. Well, I've had my share of emotional pain. Thought that I should see sunshine. All I saw was the rain. But on the other side of my worry and doubt, the sun was shining behind the clouds. That's what I'm talking about. And there is nothing to heal.
There's nothing to heal.
No, there's nothing to fix.
There's nothing to fix.
And you don't need gimmicks. You don't need tricks. It's all there inside, waiting to come out. There's nothing to heal, there's only truth to reveal. That's what I'm talking about. Now when you're looking at your neighbor and you see nothing but sin, just remember he's a mirror. You better look again. Now you may wish it was different, but there's no reason to pout. Cause when you're looking inside, there isn't much you can hide. That's what I'm talking about. And there is nothing to heal. No, there's nothing to fix. And you don't need gimmicks. Oh, you don't need tricks. It's all there inside, waiting to come out. There's nothing to heal. There's only truth to reveal. That's what I'm talking about. Well, I've always been looking for my lucky star. I was pretty sure it was out there. I just never knew how far. And when I waited for sundown, all the stars came out. Just 'cause I couldn't see, they were still waiting for me. That's what I'm talking about. And there's nothing to heal. No, there's nothing to fix. And you don't need gimmicks. Oh, you don't need tricks. It's all there inside, waiting to come out. There's nothing to